So this is a Halloween episode, right?
Holy shit. Connor with the fucking full-blown Daniel Ricciardo, rare American, facial livery. Let's fucking go. Lights out. Hit the theme. You legends.
Who gave you my number?
I was having a shit.
Okay, I'm gonna pee in your seat.
I cannot do it, man. You're having a fucking laugh.
Holy mac and cheese balls.
You are now listening to The Formula Interested American.
Welcome to the Formula Interested Americans Season 1, Episode 2. We will be recapping the U.S. Grand Prix and previewing the Mexico Grand Prix. Connor, how the hell are you?
I'm doing pretty good. If you are not watching this and you're listening to it on the radio, I'm rocking my Daniel Ricciardo face livery. It's pretty fucking sweet.
It's so fucking ugly. What
You're
the
gonna
fuck
be able
are
to
you
look
doing?
at my face the whole time and like take me seriously, or am I gonna
No, absolutely
shave
not.
this off?
No. You should keep it. But yeah, I'm just going to be giving you shit the whole time. What's your Halloween costume that you just shaved into this unbelievable wraparound goatee?
I don't actually have a Halloween costume planned out yet, but I'm just gonna build it around this facial hair. Call it a day.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be Daniel Ricciardo, maybe some sort of a legendary cowboy or something along those lines.
Just pick up, like he was on the grid with the horns and the Texas jersey. I'll just
Oh, hell yeah. That's a great idea. Get the Texas jersey and get the cowboy hat, and you can be Cowboy Daniel Ricciardo.
absolutely.
Cool. So let's kick off this episode the same way they kick off every weekend. Let's talk about qualifying and practice.
Yeah, so this week, pretty boring for the most part during practice. Qualifying too, pretty straight up.
Yeah, I mean, Q1 and Q2 definitely didn't really do a whole lot for me. I guess it was like, oh man, is Aston or Alpine or Williams or anyone going to sneak in? No. Wait a second. There's only 5 constructors in Q1. When's the last time we saw that? I don't think we've seen that all season. That's pretty cool. It's at least a little bit trivial.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to like 2017, 2018. That was pretty normal, but that was at a point in time where teams were separated by a shit ton. And right now, everybody's super close. So to see that level of disparity between the teams, that they were all qualifying kind of back to back, was a bit surprising to say the least.
Yeah, no, I was a bit hammered watching qualifying, and I looked down at my phone and it kept cutting out. Like, I had really bad service. I wasn't in a great place to be watching the race. I was watching it on my phone, and I looked down at one point and I'm like, this has to be a mistake. You've got 5 constructors in Q3, and you had the B driver on every single team except for AlphaTauri leading their team, including Checo, who was on provisional pole until like everyone did their final hot laps.
Yeah, I mean, Checo, on top of this just being a statement weekend for Red Bull overall, Checo showing the pace that he did was incredible. I mean, right up until the end, right? It looked like he was going to put the thing on pole. And, if not for the rain that he got on the end of that last lap, who knows? He may have been on pole.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, for Checo to finish third, to put in that lap in, the beginning of Q3, like, really shows a big turning point. Like you said, it's a statement weekend for Red Bull. It's a statement weekend for Max. Max getting on pole, at a Mercedes-dominated course in front of Lewis, like, a huge moment. I walked into the bathroom at this party to watch the end of qualifying so that I could be by myself and hear everything. And if there was somebody outside, like, waiting to take a dump, I'm in there just screaming, like, let's go! Max, baby, let's go! Going absolutely bananas. Like, somebody outside would have thought I was an absolute psychopath. Luckily, that didn't happen. But I think that I was even more happy, like, near tears in my eyes, seeing Checo almost get on that pole, or even having that pace, just having such a wonderful weekend. And speaking of the waterworks and the rain and so much going on with water in Checo, let's fly this into the blue flag report of who fucked it for the weekend.
Blue flags.
Blue flags! Blue fucking flags!
So, Connor, who could you possibly mention for someone who fucked it this weekend?
Whoever's in charge of Red Bull's hydration system very clearly fucked it this weekend. But what's pretty awesome here, we have a very exclusive look into the radio between Sergio and his engineer. So it starts off when Sergio realizes that his radio or his drink system is not working.
Yeah, my drink system isn't working.
With that, Checo. Okay, Checo, long way to go. Everything okay?
Yes, I'm okay. Water would be nice.
Yep, confirm. Okay, Checo, how are the tyres?
I don't need water. Water's for quitters.
P3, mate. P3. Another podium. You can go and enjoy some sparkling wine now. Rehydrate.
I need it.
Oh my god, a fucking legendary look. Exclusive to the FIA, Formula Interested Americans, the good FIA, not the bad FIA. We hate that fucking FIA. A wonderful insight from us, but I mean, yeah, Red Bull completely fucked it. And it'd be interesting to see, you know, if you gave the guy a fighting chance, what he possibly could have done this weekend was P2 in the cards. Could they have done some incredible strategy and gotten in front of Lewis? But because they fucked it so hard, like, we didn't even get the opportunity to see what Checo could have done. The fact that he still beat out Leclerc by 10 seconds, like, initially you're like, what is he doing 45 seconds behind Lewis? 10 seconds in front of Leclerc with no drink? No drink?
Dude, with these guys, their heart rate is going, 150 BPM the whole time? They're running a marathon without water if they don't have the drink system. And his pace, like, once he hit a certain point in the race, his pace dropped off like a second a lap. And that was the point where he was, you know, all curled up, shriveled up like SpongeBob, just begging for a drip of water.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. Like, I'm sitting here, we're going to podcast for the next hour, and I got a tall glass of water next to me. If I didn't, forget about it. Like, I wouldn't be able to make it through. So you put me in a car, all that G-force, all that, like, hard upper body. Like, you watch the workouts that they're doing, it looks like they're taking a dump while they're on all of those machines. They're definitely exerting themselves pretty hard. So to imagine doing that without having, like, the regular tube in your mouth, like, I'm out on that one. So shout out to Checo for sure. An amazing, heroic performance, but pretty miserable performance from the Red Bull hydration team. Another miserable performance, my blue flag of the week, I'm giving it to both AlphaTauri and Alpine. And here's why. You've got two teams that both had horrible weekends. Obviously, the Alpine weekend being worse than the AlphaTauri weekend, but these are two teams that are 10 points apart. Really, it's you know, one of the more interesting. It's one of three interesting fights that are left for this season. And you have two teams, bad weekend. The other team really needs to be able to capitalize, even if it's just go get 9-10, because those positions were readily available this weekend. And Alpine, two guys out. Pierre, who has a chance of, you know, getting higher than 9th place. I don't know that he would have given what happened this weekend, but all things considered, it's Pierre who knows what he's going to do. Pierre had to shut it down. Like, to have 3 of 4 of the contenders in this constructors battle have to retire for mechanical issues, both of them fucked it. And I don't really know what happened with the retirements. Connor, do you know what happened with the retirements for either of those teams?
The car couldn't handle my big balls.
That's Pierre on the radio, I assume.
That's Danny Kvyat a couple of years ago after he spun into the wall because he was driving too fast through a turn. But
amazing.
So what ended up happening this weekend with AlphaTauri was the rear suspension broke on Pierre's car, and then over on the Alpine side, both of their rear wings broke. And if you remember, during practice, there was an issue where Max had to replace a rear wing that had cracked. So there was some concern going into the race, at least for Red Bull. Didn't seem like Alpine was going to have a problem, but they clearly ran into it. And this plays back into what we talked about last week when previewing the track. It was a very bumpy surface right now. It was obvious, and it was all they could talk about pretty much during the coverage was how much the cars were just bouncing through, and clearly just caught up with two teams that weren't prepared for the loads that they were going to deal with this week.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like, talking about car failures, do you feel like that ties into Kimi Raikkonen, who a bit blue flagged himself? I don't know if I'll give him a full-blown award on this, but Kimi Raikkonen was running in the points. I believe he was 9th with 5 laps to go. And then the classic Kimi spinny. I know that he had taken on some damage from Alonso during their back-to-back battle, whether that was from the contact or from hitting the curbs. But do you think that that damage that he sustained or just additional damage from the track could have contributed to that spin? Or do you think that it's just regular tire attrition and Kimi being great at spinning a car?
I think that the damage did play into it for sure. When you have damage on the floor of your car, that's really important for the downforce. That's what keeps the car able to sit on the track, especially through that windy bit in the first sector where he spun off. So I've got to imagine that he was struggling on every lap to keep the car going through that section, and it just caught him out at the end, whether the damage was getting worse from going over the bumps or the damage just ended up catching up to him by the end there. I think that Kimi is an experienced enough driver that by the end of a race, he'll have it figured out that unless his car's broken, he's not doing anything like that.
Yeah. I guess if you have the combination of like decreased downforce and then like worn out tires, less grip on your tires, like that all checks out. I know that they talk about it pretty extensively with Haas and how shitty their car is, and just like that because they're such a back of the pack team, they don't have as much downforce as some of the front of the teams. It is like Alfa Romeo, is that kind of the same story there? They don't have the same level of downforce because they're ass, or is it just like other contributing factors to why their car is so bad? So
downforce is a big part of it, but there's so many different factors that play into it that they're behind on. They don't have the updated Ferrari engine, so their engines are still behind the grade, and they've got more drag on the car overall as well. So the car is slow, and it doesn't have as much downforce as the other teams. All of that adds up.
Got it. Yeah, so... but yeah, like we talked about, that contributing factor was the lost, or one of the potential contributing factors of the lost parts that Kimi, tripping over my words here, just like Kimi was tripping over the curb when he was in that battle with Fernando, and he passed off the track, got back on the track, retained his position. The FIA did not make him give the position back. I know people have talked about this ad nauseum.
I don't know, stewards are completely... I don't know. I don't have no words. It's stupid. So stupid.
Yeah, and then later on, they changed their mind when Fernando took a pass on, I believe it was Giovinazzi, off the track. They decided to just change their mind. So another blue flag person who fucked it this week would be the FIA and their inconsistent calling with the passes. I fucking hate the FIA, not this FIA. We're the good FIA. That FIA, fuck that FIA. We hate that FIA. All our homies hate that FIA. I really just can't stand it. Like, they got to get their shit together. They got to come up with some sort of a system to determine, who has the lead, who has the position, how they're going to decide on, you went off the track, you came back on the track, who should be in the lead. Maybe you put a line at the beginning of the turn. Whoever passes that first, they get the position if one of the people goes off the track. Or maybe you set up some sort of a system where it's a gentleman's system. So if you don't give the place back, it's automatic within 2 turns that you're getting that 5-second penalty. But when you have it be like multiple laps later that Alonso had 2 seconds on Giovinazzi and then had to go all the way back and give the position back, like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
You know what? I'm just at the point now where they've tried to do these things with lines and limits and all of these different rules. Just if they can make the pass off track and they can make it stick, let it happen. Like, if you can't design a track that doesn't allow a guy to get off on the side and then come back on, like, come on, man.
Yeah, but Connor, like, we can't just have like shortcuts everywhere. This isn't fucking Mario Kart. We're not going to have banana peels get thrown into our races. Like, I feel like they really need to just come up with some sort of a rule. And maybe you're right. Maybe there needs to be an all-over track redesign. Maybe there just needs to be, more pebbles on the side of the road and have it just be that more people are crashing out if they can't keep the road on the course. But I feel like there's just so much subjectivity at this point in time in the F1 rules. And the F1's been going on for at least 69 seasons now, so they should have it figured out by now. It kind of drives me nuts they haven't figured it out.
Yeah, and this is something that's been coming up a lot in recent years, too, as they've built more and more tracks with asphalt runoffs. You get way too much area that you can pass. But what was funny was a couple years ago, they ran an IndyCar race here at COTA, and they didn't enforce track limits. And they let guys drive wherever the fuck they wanted, and it was amazing. They were able to pass wherever they wanted to because there was just a lot more room. They were able to take the turns faster. It was an overall more exciting thing. And if you can't design a track that is faster to stay on the track than it is to go off, I'm sorry. I think the drivers should be able to use whatever lines that they can use without breaking the car.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be cool to see drivers just taking these incredible apexes, and how positive that might affect the experience of the race. So speaking of taking a hard right turn through the apex into some positivity, let's get into our FIA, Formula Interested Americans. Not the bad FIA, the good FIA. We hate that FIA. All my homies hate that FIA. The good FIA awards of the week.
An award? I never got an award before.
Sticking to the SpongeBob theme for this week. So, Patrick Star in a Shitty Car award. Connor, who do you have this week?
I got to go with my boy, Sebastian Vettel. Seb, straight up easy to look at was that he started the race in 17th or 18th and got all the way back up to score the last points of the race. Was he helped out by Kimi Raikkonen a little bit? Sure. But he also was gaining on him at the end, which is what put the pressure on Kimi that probably helped lead to his spin a little bit as well. But other things that he had to deal with this weekend, I mean, during qualifying, he was impeded by Nikita Mazepin, who we said we weren't going to talk about this week, but it was just fucking blatant. Vettel's response to this was pretty fucking funny.
What a dickhead! I mean, seriously, what a dickhead!
Looks like a dickhead.
So, he could have been, and it didn't matter because he had the 20-place grid penalty, but if it hadn't been for that impediment, there's a good chance he would have made it to Q3 this week. And if Seb had made it to Q3 with, Gasly ending up retiring and the relative lack of pace from McLaren that we saw this week, who knows? Maybe he could have gained that spot ahead of Yuki. Maybe he could have been fighting up there with Bottas and the other McLarens. You never know. So definitely this week impressed by what Seb was able to pull off.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the shittiness of his car this week was having to start 20th. The star element is the fact that he made up 10 places. The fact that he didn't win driver of the day this week kind of, pissed me off a little bit. Because I thought he deserved it. I thought he ran a really great race. He kind of just stayed in it, made no mistakes. Strategically, they did okay. It's so hard to see.
He was way ahead of Stroll, so it just shows that he was getting the pace out of the car.
Stroll crashed on the first lap. He connected with Latifi and went to the back, so that's
Which
a little bit
might have torpedoed him on that one, but
yeah. It's hard to say. Obviously, the car has been so inconsistent this year. So could he have competed with Lando? I don't really think so. But could he have been a place higher? Potentially. And maybe his presence there in the early race could have made some different things happen. So it would have been interesting. But I'm pretty happy that we got that interesting qualifying that only had 5 conductors. So selfishly, happy that happened. But it was cool to see him come all the way from the back and continue to score some points in that overall overtaking championship for the year.
And who did you have this week for your star in a shitty car, Noel?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso. And for a similar reason to Seb Vettel, obviously, he came from 19th or 20th, wherever he started, worked his way all the way back up, was in the points for a little bit, or at least fighting for the points with Kimi and with Giovinazzi. But obviously what makes him a star in a shitty car this week is he didn't get to finish the race, so his car falling apart definitely makes the car shitty. But the other element being in FP1, his car pissed all over the track. Like a dude who drank one too many beers, he's fucking sitting in his seat, his car's just pissing everywhere. They had to guys come out and fucking clean up the track and put the thing back together so that it could be presentable for race day tomorrow. So the car was experiencing all sorts of issues, not to mention his car was not looked at as leniently by the FIA as Raikkonen's car was. Raikkonen allowed to pass off track in an Alpha. Him not allowed to pass off track in an Alpine. So the FIA definitely made it an even shittier reason to be in that car this week.
Yeah, that was pretty wild, the inconsistencies there, which we touched on a little bit earlier. But who do you got this week for your Pirelli Whisper Award? Who was best on the tires?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Max is a pretty obvious choice. Late in the race, him being able to hang on to his tires when Lewis was charging so that, the last 5 laps, they were definitely going back and forth way more with who was putting on a faster lap rather than just be Lewis closing on him. Additionally, really cool shit where he was on the radio and he was like, hey, I'm coming up with a strategy and we're going to follow it. Like him having that thought process of the tires while he's driving, it's definitely a cool element to be thrown in. So I think Max winning the race, saving his tires the last 5 laps, and then being able to have some discussion on the radio for additional tire strategy. I really think that he's the one that did the most with tires this week, or most to talk about. And what about you?
I'm going to take the complete contrary to that. I'm going to say that Lewis was the best on his tires. Max had a pretty piss poor. Yeah, dude, Max's first stint was 10 laps? Lewis was able to hold his pace for an additional 3 laps. He then had a much longer middle stint. If it wasn't for Mercedes totally fucking up the strategy, the last stint where his tires were 6 laps or 5 laps newer than Max, if they had put that new set of mediums on that they didn't end up using, we would have caught up to him at the end. And the fact that...
Yeah, but he didn't.
Again, that's on Mercedes, man. They put the wrong fucking tires in the car. Lewis was able to keep his tires going for longer at a pace that was able to match or gain on Max throughout his stints. So I'm going Lewis.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this is kind of an all-encompassing thing that includes strategy, and I think that because obviously their strategy didn't work, but that being said, I don't disagree with you. I think that if the mediums or somehow they figure out how to put some softs on, you definitely have the opportunity to catch him. One thing I've noticed, I don't really feel like they're using softs at all during the race. Is that kind of a normal thing, that soft is just a qualifying tire and that you don't really use a soft during the race unless it's extenuating circumstances or you're trying to get a fast lap?
Yeah, I mean, for this season, that's been the case. The soft tires really have been a terrible race tire at almost every single track. In recent years, you'll get guys at least the first stint they're starting on the softs, and we've seen that a little bit this year. But it used to be you would try to go in, do a 2-stop strategy where your middle stint was on the mediums or the hards, and then you try to throw on some softs at the end to really pound in the laps. But we just haven't seen that. We've seen a lot of 1-stop strategy races this year, and this week, even though it was a 2-stop, the early stops happened so early that there just was too many laps at the end for anyone to really seriously consider putting softs on to finish out the race.
Yeah. Is it just because the softs leave too much skid marks?
On that note, we're going to talk about our Skiddy Awards for the week. I'll kick this one off. Seriously, everyone had pretty clean shorts for this week. No dirty laundry for Mama to do.
Yeah, I don't. That's where I'm going to disagree with you on this one, Con. I think that Daniel Ricciardo probably had some skid marks in his shorts. He definitely had some scares in that race. Obviously, that first lap, that drama back and forth with him and Lando and Carlos, really close and a lot of close calls. But the moment I'm talking about specifically was the moment when Carlos was trying to pass him, or those laps that Carlos was trying to pass him. It was very close quite a few times, and it ultimately culminated in Carlos and Daniel coming together, and Carlos sustaining some damage on his wing. But if Carlos didn't have that damage, he was by him. He was closing so aggressively. I don't believe that, simultaneously as he hit him, his tires also started to degrade enough that his pace flew off. I really think that loss of pace, which was immediate and apparent, was all to do with that contact. So they had the contact, no accident, and then Carlos was able to go out the back. Daniel was able to sigh this sigh of relief, and then to pour some sugar on top, or whatever the phrase is, the cherry on top. Bottas was able to catch Carlos, and make an even greater swing in or at least mitigate the gain that Ferrari got on McLaren in the Constructors' Cup this week. So it worked out really great for him, but there was definitely a moment where he's like, shit, I need to keep Carlos behind me. I can't keep Carlos behind me. Oh my God, we just crashed. We just made contact. What's going to happen? Oh, this is actually going to work out great for me. So I'm going to say that Daniel had the skiddy of the week, but I definitely wouldn't say that was the best on-track battle or the best on-track pass. Would you?
No, for sure. But one thing I got to say is my shorts, they were pretty clean. I knew I was going to make it through that. The only skid marks I left on the track this weekend is when I drove Dale Earnhardt's car. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, dude. I mean, his interview that he gave with the Texas accent was fantastic. I mean, his antics this whole weekend were really just very special. I love that he went to the tattoo parlor with Zach. Zach's tattoo, it's okay. But I thought that his antics this weekend were just spot on, and he's really just constantly just flexing his star power on everyone. So, but anyway, let's go back to the on-track battles or passes. Who do you got this week for the best one?
I mean, the first lap overall was just insane. I am, first off, just impressed that nobody crashed on that lap with the amount of dicing that everybody had. I mean, there was a small spin at the beginning with Latifi hitting, but nothing major, right? But in particular, if I got to pick one, when you had the McLarens that were both passing signs on either side, and then Ricciardo ends up all the way in 7th, and he gets passed by both of those guys to reclaim 5th place, where he ended up finishing the race. I mean, that was deciding for him, right? He had fallen to 7th place at the beginning. Maybe he gets past Carlos and gets up to 6th, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I thought that was definitely an awesome battle back and forth, and I just touched on the later elements of the battle, and like you said, it really set the tone for the rest of the race. It really had a pretty vast effect. It was a 4-point swing that he was able to stay in front of him. It would have been cool to see if Lando could have gotten in front of Carlos as well, and then you had 2 McLarens in front. Carlos had to work his way through both of them. How would that have worked out? But definitely a really cool couple lap battle there. But not my favorite. My favorite this week, I know we've touched on it a lot, but it's the Alpine radio with the FIA.
So, Michael, can I just confirm we can overtake off the track if we're going around the outside of another car, yeah?
No, you can't overtake off the track.
Well, that's what Raikkonen's just done.
Understand.
So it's okay?
No, it's not okay.
But it's okay for Raikkonen?
No, it's not okay for anyone.
That's one of my all-time favorite radio clips. That's just so funny. It's really indicative of what we've been talking about.
Michael, it's just Toto. Did you get my email?
Another great one. But yeah, I think that that's my favorite battle there, is just the internal monologue of the FIA being like, do we keep it fair, or do we just do whatever the hell we want? Do we know what we're doing? No? Okay. Well, let's make it as apparent as possible on the radio with the Alpine team. So that battle back and forth with Alonso and the Alfa Romeo team, and then the drama that ensued, that was my favorite battle on track this week.
All right, so let's grab the transmission, shift some gears, and transition to our next section. Upshift. Nolan, who you got? Who's trending up?
I wanted to say Antonio Giovinazzi, but then I learned that Antonio Giovinazzi is not a rookie. It's actually his 3rd year. And I was like, oh man, he would have retained his seat if he was just driving this well at the beginning of the year. Like, he's got rookie growing pains, whatever. And Connor's like, no, you dumbass, this is his 4th year, 3rd year as a full-time driver. So fuck that guy. He's had his chance. But my upshift would be Yuki Sonoda. And this is not that I think that Yuki Sonoda is showing us anything new. I don't really think that he's out here being like, hey guys, look at me, I'm actually pretty good. It's like, we've known that about Yuki, but he's just been so inconsistent, and like, has qualified really poorly. When he's qualified well, he's spun. When he hasn't qualified well, it's because he's spun. He's crashed a lot. Like, he's really just been inconsistent. So for him to have a good week this week, especially on a week where Pierre couldn't finish, he finished where Pierre would have finished. I don't think Pierre was going to get much higher than 8th place, 9th where Yuki finished. So maybe they could have gotten an extra point if Pierre stayed in. But Yuki did his job this week. He qualified super well. And then he was where he needed to be in the race. And I think he was holding off Bottas at the beginning of the race as well, if I'm not mistaken. Like, Yuki's just a defensive machine. I fucking love these really good drivers trying to get past Yuki and him just being like, nah. So Yuki just not showing us anything we haven't seen. We've seen a lot of awesome Yuki defensive moments. We've seen a lot of just like promise. We were promised a lot from him coming in. So him doing what he's supposed to do, that's better than how he's been doing in the past. So I would say that's an upshift. Who do you got?
Yeah, for me, it's going to be lame. We've heard this a lot this week in plenty of places, but like the US GP in general. Before COVID, the last US GP was not that well attended, and there were people talking that it was going to get canceled, that we weren't going to have a race in Texas anymore. So to see them get 400,000 fans over 3 days, and just like the general hype and excitement, even like I'm in Pittsburgh and people showed up to bars to watch this shit in droves. This was a really great, moment for F1 in the United States. And then this week, the pre-sale for the Miami race got canceled because they sold out all the tickets before the pre-sale even started.
Yeah, truly disappointing for us. But, I mean, listen, this has been our plan all along. We start this podcast, we get super fucking famous, and then we get into these races for free with our press passes. So we have no concerns about this. We know that this is going to be an absolute rocket ship to the goddamn moon. That's going to deliver us. What's that?
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe. Please help us be able to get into these races entirely for free so that we can do press coverage and just talk nonsense the way that we want to. So you scratch our back, we give you very good content, of course. All right. Well, I know we were talking about how great we are, but we'll talk about how not great some people have been lately. Connor, who hasn't been great lately? Who this week was trending down?
I mean, they've been trending down all season, but I think this week we saw it because it really cost them big time, was the Mercedes strategy team. The fact that they put Lewis on a very strange strategy to begin with by putting him behind. And then once they did that, they doubled down by putting him on hard tires at the end. Lewis had a set of brand new medium tires that they could have maybe gone an extra lap or two in the middle on that stint and then put the mediums on at the end. He would have had 7/10 on the tires against what Max was doing, and he would have caught up to him like a rocket ship. And I think those last 2 or 3 laps would have been a lot tighter had the strategy team either A, just stayed in front of Max and pitted when Red Bull did, or B, been a bit more aggressive and used those medium tires that they spent all weekend preparing for and then just didn't use them.
Yeah, and I think that like another element to it to talk about like Mercedes trending downward is just like specifically Mercedes reliability, having to take a 20th engine for Bottas, like having to get him to have another engine penalty. Like it really seemed like they took that engine penalty that one weekend that Max took his engine penalty so that Bottas could play defense. But I'm starting to think that although that would have been a crazy strategy move, I absolutely don't think that they did that, or I hope not, because it's just so dumb. But I'm starting to think that it was legitimately because their reliability is hot trash on at least Valtteri's engine, which transitions well into my downshift. It's reliability as a whole. This week you saw 3 drivers that retired because of mechanical issues. We really haven't seen a whole lot of mechanical issue retirements outside of a few races for Haas this season, where guys have had to step out because they've had some sort of a non-crash, non-collision related mechanical failure. So it's getting to that time of the season where, you're starting to see real attrition with the reliability of the cars. And I know that this was a tough course on cars, but, you had the 3 in-race retirements. You had 4 people take grid penalties to take power units. Like, it's really getting down to that time where I think it's going to get really interesting in terms of strategy on what people are, when people are willing to take penalties or how they're going to take penalties, et cetera, but also like getting to the element of like, hey, durability is actually a really important factor over a 21 race season. So being able to see who built that car that can handle all of these weeks with the new salary or cost cap, whatever they call it in F1, it's very interesting. But reliability definitely going down, and I think that that's going to play a really really big part going forward for the rest of the season.
We got 5 races left, and every single driver right now has used the maximum amount of components that they can use. So if anybody has to replace an engine, a transmission, a hybrid system, an electronic system, they're automatically getting a penalty, and they're automatically moving down the grid. We're going to see a lot of that over the next 5 weeks.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that ties into my burnt clutch, my thing that really grinds my gears. And I think that the luck on this is going to change. We haven't seen a whole lot of mid-race yellows or reds that have mixed up the strategy. Like, obviously, we've had the odd races when Max and Lewis tangle, and then Daniel ends up in front, or Ocon ends up in front, or whoever, whatever. But there hasn't been a whole lot of red flags, yellow flags late in the race. First lap, sure, but late in the race, there hasn't been that much stuff that's really mixed up the strategy.
And for a purist like me, that's a good thing. That means that the guys are doing what they need to be doing, and we're not getting weird, race results because of things that just kind of happen out of people's control.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think for this year, given how tight and how exciting all of the title races are right now, I agree with you. I don't necessarily know that I want some gimmicky bullshit that has Lance Stroll win a race. But that being said, it is pretty interesting when it happens. It's kind of cool every once in a while to just be like, oh my God, Esteban Ocon, like Pierre winning last year. But I do hear you. What do you have for your gear grinding this week? You have anything?
Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy in general media coverage, but we're going to make that our topic for the week, so we'll push that off until later.
Cool. Well, you want to run through some other gears then? Talk about the title fights? Yeah.
So we'll start on the Red Bull Mercedes side of things. Well, I think this was a frustrating weekend for Mercedes. I think that they can take away some positives from this. And the car itself had more pace maybe than some people were anticipating at the beginning of the weekend. And the pace was there, right? Lewis got the pass at the beginning, which is the first time he's gotten a good start, maybe all season. So it's good to see that they've gotten their start issues figured out. And I think that if their strategy team was up to the par that we expect them to be, they would have and should have won this race. On top of it, Valtteri got stuck down behind a whole bunch of guys in traffic, but his pace at the end of the race shows that when he doesn't have these engine penalties, he's going to be up there with Lewis, and they're going to be able to play that strategy game the same way that Red Bull is able to do right now with Checo, the way that he's driving. So I think that Mercedes is stressed, but I think that they're feeling maybe not as bad as they were a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, when Max won 4 races in a row, I'm sure Mercedes wasn't particularly excited. Obviously, they've been on the upclimb the last few weeks. This was a bit of a stand for Red Bull. It's an awesome victory from them. But hopefully you pray to God that they don't need to give Valtteri another penalty before the end of the year. And obviously there's a chance that Perez or Max or anyone else will have to take engine penalties. So your hope is that you got that out of the way. So I guess that's something good you can take out of it. And after Valtteri had his second pit stop, he did really find some pace, made up 3 positions. So I agree with you that there's some good to take away from it, but I don't think that there's as much good to take away from it as Red Bull has. Red Bull, we keep saying this, is a statement weekend. This is a Mercedes track. And Checo qualifies 3rd, goes out there. What's the Spanish word for big balls?
Cajones.
Cajones grandes. Cajones grandes. Sin agua? Are you kidding me? This dude that's the coolest thing ever. I mean, Kimi Raikkonen does it every week. So, and he does it with and he does it with a boot full of water. So, I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was an amazing story. When I heard it afterwards, I was like, what a huge moment. And I'm very glad that this is not a back-to-back week like I thought it was, because that's going to drain you. He's definitely going to be significantly more sore, more tired. He's going to require a lot more rest going into the next race. So I'm glad he has that 2-week grace period to get that body back and ready to go before Mexico. But in general, just such a such a statement weekend for Max to get all those points, to qualify on pole again, for Checo to finally find pace in qualifying. So I know that I was a little bit down on Red Bull last week, but after this, it's like, I don't know anymore. And they closed the gap a little bit in the constructors as well. So there's a chance that they close that gap all the way in constructors. And I don't think that Sergio is going to catch Valtteri, but listen, if Valtteri has to take another 20-place grid penalty, I guess anything's possible.
Yeah, so I think we covered that. Let's move on to McLaren and Ferrari.
Yep. Yeah. Ferrari, man, I just think it's going to be a runaway. Like, I know it's been so close and it's been so fun back and forth, and it's been really great to see. Obviously, McLaren getting that 1-2 helps their points significantly. If Lando won that race or even came in second like he should have at Hungary, Russia, this really would be interesting if they had an additional cushion. I think it'd be really interesting, but I think that without that additional cushion and with the direction that Ferrari is going in, I think that it's going to be really difficult for McLaren to hold off Ferrari. I mean, Lando and I'm drawing a blank. Leclerc were both equally as relevant this weekend, but for completely different reasons. No one could catch Leclerc, but Lando couldn't catch anybody. Like, Lando didn't have an overtaking opportunity. No one tried to overtake on him. I guess Bottas passed him, but he just didn't have anything. There was nothing there this weekend from Lando. Daniel, obviously, good qualifying, good race, got lucky without getting passed by Checo and Bottas. Or not Checo, Carlos and Bottas, really struggling this week. But I just think that, like, with the way that Leclerc is driving right now, Sainz should have gotten past Ricciardo. The pace is just really there for Ferrari, and I just don't imagine that McLaren's going to just find it later in the season.
Grazie ragazzi, forza Ferrari! Let's go, boys. I am excited to see the team in red back in a position where they look good. I mean, right, the car is not totally there yet, but the way they're trending, 2022, baby, let's see what happens. Leclerc is just balling right now, man. Get that guy a competitive car. He has been competitive time-wise. Last week, you know, he was doing great. He was matching Max at the beginning, and this week he gained so much time on Checo at the end. Now, we know Checo was literally shriveling up and dying. But,
handicap.
You know, still, great pace, great driver. Let's see him in a championship battle with Max and George and Lewis next year. If those cars are anywhere close to each other, mega battle.
Yeah, could be really fun for sure. They got a great driver lineup. So, speaking of great driver lineups, we'll move on to the AlphaTauri, Alpine, and Aston battle.
Everybody fucked themselves. We already talked about that. That's really all I have to say here.
Yeah, I know I made some decisive decisions about how I felt that this battle was going to go last week. But I'm really shocked at how Alpine just really fell apart. I feel like I was jumping the gun there, talking about how great they were doing, how great Ocon's been doing. But I think that if their momentum is not going to carry in the same way, and if Yuki Sonoda is like, yeah, you know what, I figured out this driving thing, I'm going to be good and not crash. Like, if you can get Yuki to a point where he's consistent enough and he's scoring points, not at the same rate that Pierre is, but at least he's scoring points, I think that I don't even want to call it progression, but just figuring it out, like greater consistency, is going to potentially get them in front of Alpine, but at minimum just leverage the carnage that's going to come from this resurgence of Alonso, and if Ocon decides that he wants to drive a car well again. So Aston, I don't even think we need to touch on. Cool to see Seb go all the way up the fields, but I mean, shit, they score 1 point this week. They're 30 points down at this point, so it's going to be quite difficult for them to be relevant in the constructors unless it's a rain race. And Lance Stroll can win.
And there's really nothing else interesting happening with the last three teams. Williams, Haas, and Alfa Romeo are way out of it. But I just want to make one note. Mick Schumacher really this year is impressing me. He was a minute and 30 seconds out of his teammate this week, which I guess is not saying too much, but he was real close to the back of the pack in a car that we all know hasn't been developed in 2 years. It's the slowest car in the grid by a mile. So for him to be, within 10 seconds of the guy in last place, or in last place besides him, that's a pretty great showing. And I hope that Haas can put a car together next year that allows him to really get into the fight so people can watch and see how good of a driver he really is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's cool to see that Giovinazzi and Raikkonen have been racing better. They have been in it for the points, but there's just so few points at the back of the pack there that unless there's a really gimmicky race where one of them can come top 4, top 5, whatever it is, I don't really think that they're going to catch up to Williams. Williams, I don't think is going to score much more points this season either, unless it's the same situation. So it's hey, if there's gimmicks, maybe this could get interesting, but without it, I don't really think there's going to be a whole lot to talk about here.
No. Middle of the season, George's dick just got rock hard, got him that Mercedes seat, and now he's like, all right, cool.
Yep. So, but what there is a lot to talk about is for this week's topic. This week's topic, we are going to talk about just the general media BS. This isn't specific to this weekend, but I feel like this weekend was a really pinnacle moment for media BS. So, we're going to talk about a little bit of the media BS that happens during the race, during practice, just in general. We're going to cover media BS. So, Connor, I'll kick it to you to talk to us about the first piece of BS of the weekend, which was the P1 rear suspension drama.
So, during practice, and it was mentioned a couple times throughout the weekend, there was talk about how Mercedes had this new trick on their rear suspension where as they're going down the straight, the back of their car would drop, which lowers their downforce, allows them to go a lot faster on the straights. And it was brought up by Paul di Resta at the end of one of the practice sessions and made into this whole big thing about is this legal? Is this not legal? And as it turns out, there are 7 teams on the Formula One grid that have this exact feature on their car. Not only that, but it's perfectly legal within the rules. And people have been doing it now since at least 2018. And some teams even are more aggressive with how this works than Mercedes is, Ferrari in particular. But you haven't heard anybody really talking about that. And I think it's people trying to add more fuel, more drama, more fire to this Red Bull versus Mercedes fight. And I don't think you need to add anything right now. It's already red hot. It's already engaging. Why do we need to put more bullshit into it that's really easy to disprove and just show that it's fake?
Yeah. No, I feel like that comes up quite a bit. And obviously big news this week is that Max came out and said, hey, I'm not going to participate in the Netflix series for this season, which is a fucking shame because you have this amazing battle. And he's like, yeah, I don't even want to participate in this. You guys are just going to make up some nonsense, which they definitely, play up some things and it's for TV and it's for the casual fan. And I get it and I understand that, but it's sad that they couldn't go to Max and say, hey, we'll cut a deal with you. You get final say on any of the storylines that we talk about you or something along those lines, not getting him involved. But it's to what you're talking about. It's just why do we need to further ham up something that's so brilliant already?
Yeah, and on top of it too, the way that this could have been covered is as, an intrigue and a praise of what these engineers are able to pull off with these absolutely incredible, amazing machines, right? Instead of talking about how cool it was that Mercedes pulled this off in a way that seems to work better than a lot of the other teams, we're talking about whether or not it's legal and how Red Bull is going to, fight against it. And the first question they asked Christian Horner this weekend was, what do you think about Mercedes suspension? Rather than talking about what about Checo? How's Checo doing this weekend? How is, Max dealing with the pressure of leading the championship in a way that seems, he seems cool as a cucumber. Like, it's not bothering him at all.
Yeah.
Rather than talking about stuff that is cool and important and actually happening, we're making shit up and, leading to drivers opting out of things that really are good and beneficial for the sport as a whole.
Definitely. Yeah, but I guess this is a good transition to my second part. At least they're talking about the race. They're talking about cars. They're talking about the teams. My biggest thing, what really ground my gears and what I had to hold back on for using for the burnt clutch sections that we could save for this is the celebrity coverage this weekend. This shit drives me up a fucking wall. I do not care that Aston Martin has Rory McIlroy as their guest, or that Serena's hanging out with Lewis again, or that Megan Thee Stallion's there, or Berna D whatever that is all over for our F1's Instagram. I've never even heard of this guy. Berna Boy. Who is this guy? Why do they care? The hilarious argument with Martin Brundle in the pit lane with the guy who works for Megan Thee Stallion that looks like Target brand Draco Malfoy, like my dad'll sue you type vibes. Like, fuck that guy. That was so fucking hilarious that Martin Brundle just full blown, the line of the century. You know what I'm saying?
I can do that because I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that because I did. Unbelievable. But yeah, like it just drives me nuts. It's like you have this unbelievable on-track battle that's so important for the season going on between Max and Lewis. Lewis is hunting down Max. They're getting closer and closer. Lewis is getting very close to that DRS range. So much is going on the track, and there's Ben Stiller in the garage with Ferrari. Who fucking cares? Are you kidding me? Get back to the track. And then the Instagram coverage is all about, like, which celebrity was there? Winnie Harlow hanging out with the W Series.
Oh, don't even get me started on Winnie Harlow.
It's like, well, yeah. But it's like, these women are so much more than Winnie Harlow. Like, why are we even paying attention to Winnie Harlow? Like, it seems really disparaging to these women that just, like, are out here incredible, like, racing car drivers because it's like, oh, this woman's, like, attractive. People
or the
like to look at
engineering teams. Like, let's show them.
Yeah, it drives me nuts. And Shaq being on the podium, I really didn't fuck with. It's like, if you want to represent
The only point I'll make on that one is Shaquille O'Neal, I genuinely think is an F1 fan because he's been to tons of races. There are pictures and videos of it. Like, that one, maybe I'll give them that one.
Yeah, but it's just like, if you want to represent America to the global audience and be like, hey, America belongs in F1. We should be here. Like, these fans should be accepted by the global, market. I don't know that, like, everyone in the world is as excited about, like, Formula One being appropriated by America, but I don't think that being like, hey, do you guys remember that America has these cool people that live there? Like, it doesn't do anything for me. I definitely, like, I hope to God that the average fan is smart enough to be like, this is so stupid, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just way too intellectual for this shit, and these, like, very gimmicky marketing tactics work elsewhere that just don't really work on me.
Well, look, thank God this week none of the gimmicky shit they did ended up affecting the race like a couple years ago. They had Winnie Harlow waving the checkered flag one year, I think the Canadian Grand Prix. And she waved the fucking flag a lap early, and they had to reset the entire race a lap.
Yeah.
So at least they didn't pull that shit. But I agree with you. I think that, like, fans around the world are looking at, like, the U.S. race, and they're like, what the fuck? Like, this is cool, but also why? Why is this necessary? You want to make sure that if a U.S. fan like us ends up in Belgium for a race, hopefully not raining next time, we'll talk about that in a different episode, that they're not going to look at us like, oh, you schmuck. Like, you just saw it on TV and now you spent all this money to come over here. Like, no, we're serious about this. We care. We love Formula One.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it would have been interesting. I guess they did include Danica Patrick in the booth, which I thought was cool. I know you didn't think that she did a great job, but
I love Danica. I just thought she was flat this week.
Yeah, but I think that there's better ways that you can emphasize, America and American racing culture rather than like America as celebrities. Like, remind people what else we have. We have tits, guns, and beer. The most important American shit. And barbecue. But Daniel Ricciardo did a better job being like, this is a meme of America. This is like the funny shit about America. This is like what we love and like, what's humorous instead of like the coverage. So, that kind of drove me nuts, but Danica Patrick on the mic kind of got me thinking. Like, obviously she's a former IndyCar racer, but Formula One right now, the announcers generally I think they do a pretty good job. Sometimes they're a little bit annoying, but there aren't that many guys that I feel like are particularly young and new and relevant and have been involved on track recently, other than Jenson Button, who kind of comes in and gives really great analysis. But the conversation we wanted to have was, who do you think would be the best announcer of anyone on the Formula One grid currently? So after they retire, pull a Tony Romo, go into the booth, and just absolutely murder it. So, Con, who do you think would be that guy?
The stash. Danny Ricciardo, man. He's got personality for days. I think that he would keep people engaged. I think he'd really do a great job with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel conflicted on this one because whenever I hear an interview with Daniel Ricciardo, I'm always like very impressed with how engaged he is with the sport, his understanding of like the history of it, and like just his overall knowledge and the way that he's able to convey it, I think is really good. My problem is I think that his personality might be a little too strong to where we'd go to the U.S. Grand Prix and people would be like, oh, devastating. We'd go to the U.S. Grand Prix and people would be like, hey, Daniel, do the thing, have the mustache, drive the NASCAR, wear a stupid outfit, like do a shoey. And I just don't think that the announcer should be like the star of the show. They should just be adding color. So I think that finding somebody that has that same level of like passion and love for the history of Formula One without that distracting personality, I think that would be the best move. And I really think that Seb, who I know is your guy, would be the best announcer.
Yeah, no, Seb's great. I think that Seb, the one concern I would have about Seb as an announcer is he is such a Formula One nerd. Does he do what I do sometimes? And he goes way too into the weeds. I would fucking love it, but for a casual fan, how does that relate? How does that work? Him and Daniel Ricciardo, they might play well together as a team to balance each other out.
Yeah, you could have Seb as your practice days guy, the guy who's really getting technical and talking about it. And people that are tuning in for practice anyway, they're the yous of the world, and me occasionally, but they're the people that are really into it. And then you could have Daniel Ricciardo taking more of that forefront thing for just like the casual fan, someone to try to get into it, or someone that just doesn't really like want to get so technical with it. So I think that's actually a really good suggestion, is you just put those two together. I feel like they have that a bit right now, that Martin Brundle and Crofty, they have like this good back and forth of being like goofy and also like technical and understanding. They can pitch to Karun if they need something really technical, Jensen for something that's more on track, or Paul di Resta if they want him to say something stupid. But they have like a good balance right now. But I think they could get a little bit more youthful.
Yeah. Any thoughts, ideas, comments about how they could improve the coverage? I mean, we talked a lot about things that bothered us, and I guess you could just stop doing those things. But are there any other things, you as a newer fan, that you would like to see them add to the coverage?
Yeah, I think that not having the perspective of like, oh, this is something they used to do that I think they should continue or like bring back, that kind of like hurts me in this conversation. But there's nothing really that I can think of. I enjoy watching Formula One generally. I think that having more like high production documentaries really helps. For me, I really got into like climbing because I loved climbing documentaries, and it was about like one specific climber and they're trying to do this climb. I think that there could be more things that are specific to a singular team, maybe one episode or a docu-series about specific teams. I think that Netflix does such an amazing job, like giving you the reasons why you should care about the back of the grid. I don't know necessarily that we need that on a race calling perspective, but I think that just media as a whole, having those documentaries, having those behind the scenes, and making them really high production, because McLaren every week does like a race recap on their YouTube channel, and it's just long. It's kind of like a vlog, and I'm not a big like vlog watching guy. And if I wanted to watch one of those from every team, you're putting in 10 hours a week. Like, I'm not trying to watch a whole season of Game of Thrones every week. So give me one a season, one every once in a while, one per team a season, like a Hard Knocks type series. Like, I think that could be really cool. But outside of that, I don't have anything for like day of coverage. You got anything?
One thing I'd want them to bring back, which they did for a very short window of time and then stopped, they have a meeting of the drivers before every single race where they talk about, you know, things that happened in previous races, talk about rules, talk about, you know, why this guy got penalized, why this guy didn't. There was a lot of really interesting insight in those clips and those videos. From what I heard, they stopped doing it because the drivers felt that they weren't able to speak up and speak their minds in these meetings, and they wanted it to be kind of secret and closed off. But if you go on YouTube and you look any of those up, they're really, really fantastic. And watching like Romain Grosjean, who at the time I think was like head of the drivers union, shitting on other drivers for like doing things, and then Sergio Perez turning around and being like, "Are you his dad?" Like, that shit was classic.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to be able to see like the press conferences, because we see them like in the Netflix series, you see them on YouTube, but you can never watch the press conference. So Formula One, if you're listening, get us press passes so that we can watch the press conference. That's it.
Yeah, we'll cover them. We'll come with great questions, and I'll wear this mustache, and people will love it. I promise.
Yeah. You know what? And if you'll have us, we'll even show up to the next race. And maybe this preview here will give you a reason why you think maybe we should be there to cover it after this great preview.
So the next race coming up is the Mexico GP, which is in Mexico City, pretty much in the heart of the city. So it's cool, easy to get to. The track itself is a fairly tight track, so we're going to see a high downforce. It's also at high altitude. And the reason why that's important is the Red Bull engine, the Honda engine, has been incredibly good in high altitude. The higher you get up in altitude, the less air you're putting in the engine, and the more they struggle to breathe. Usually costs teams like Mercedes a lot more power than Honda, any Honda-powered team like AlphaTauri or Red Bull. So unless Mercedes has made some changes to their engine, this is going to be a good race, I think, for Red Bull, but also for the AlphaTauris. They could end up in a position where they're looking at, you know, maybe even podium spots because of the engine that they have in the car. In the past, this race came back onto the calendar in 2015. It was won by Mercedes with Nico Rosberg, and then the year after that with Lewis. But then since then, 2017 and 2018, Max won both those years. 2019, Max was on pole, but him and Lewis made contact in the second turn. He fell all the way to the back of the grid to fix some wing damage. Was able to get all the way back up to sixth place. And Albon finished in fifth, which, I mean, if you know anything about Albon, it's a good finish for him. So, for me, I think that it's going to be a Red Bull win, and Mercedes is going to basically just have to do whatever they can to mitigate the loss, and then go down to Brazil in a couple weeks and hopefully start turning their season around.
Yeah, just a quick question here. Because Pierre, because both of the Alpines had, I guess the Alpines had rear wing, but Pierre had suspension. If he has to take a new suspension, which I assume he does, right? Unless they can repair that one, does he have to take a grid penalty?
No grid penalties for failures on things like suspension or body panels or anything that has to do with safety. The only places with penalties are engine electronics, hybrid system, and the transmission.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about our podium predictions here and then get out of here because I really got to pee.
Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen,
yep,
Lewis Hamilton.
Yep. I mean, you said it last week, and I think that after you look at this week's results with Checo having some pace, maybe if you get him a glass of water, I don't think that that's going to be that crazy. I thought
would be nice.
I thought it was a bad call, but I was wrong. I think it's a really good prediction. Yeah, I like it. I like the idea. I will go with Max on... I'll go Max podium. Max number 1, and then we can go... I want Checo to get second, so I'll just go Max, Checo, 1, 2. And then third, I guess it's going to be Lewis, but that's so boring. Let's say third's going to be Leclerc, and then fourth is going to be Lewis. I don't know why, but it's just going to be Lewis. And then fifth is going to be Pierre Gasly. That's what I'm thinking.
Good prediction.
But
it's not going to happen.
No, it's very wishful. But I think that this is going to be a huge separation week for Ferrari from McLaren, and I think that that's really going to be that's really going to set the tone for the rest of the battle between those two.
High downforce track. Ferrari seems to like that this year.
Yeah. So, all right, man. That's all I got. Wave the checkered flag and get out of here.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Tune in next week.
Who gave you my number?
Actually, there might not be one next week. But why don't we have another one? Come on. Next week. Where's your present?
Okay, I'm going to be in your team. I cannot do it when you're having a fucking laugh.
I'm going to be in my seat.
Holy mac and cheese balls.
You are now listening to The Formula Interested American.
Boom.